Thank you. And now for the State Representative, Position 1, Legislative District 16, the candidates are Maureen Walsh and Mary Ruth Edwards. You will each have 2 minutes for an opening statement, and we'll start at my left. Mary Ruth.
I do better. Holding this. Is this on? There we go.
Works.
Okay. Hi, I'm Mary Ruth Edwards, and I am running for State Representative in the 16th District. I'm a conservative Republican, and I'm pro-life, pro-liberty, and pro-traditional marriage. I've been endorsed by Franklin County Republicans, Human Life of Washington, and Clint Didier. I'm for families and homeowners, and I've been rated outstanding by the Citizens Alliance for Property Rights. I served in the Marines, and now my son is also a Marine. I have a business degree, and I worked in business for many years. Teaching is my second degree, second degree and second career. When it comes to education, I believe that we should let parents decide how best to educate their children in charter schools, online schools, homeschools, or public schools. I do believe it's important for the parents to have that decision. In the legislature, I believe that we need to make priorities of government a permanent part of the budget process to aid in producing an efficient and balanced budget. We need to give the governor a little bit more leeway in budget cuts. Currently, state law mandates that when necessary, the governor make cuts across the board. Doesn't it make more sense to carefully and thoughtfully consider budget cuts? In other words, the scalpel versus the chainsaw approach. I believe that protecting the definition of marriage will also help our economy. In a recent press release, Preserve Marriage Washington cited research that shows that states where voters have rejected redefining marriage are the top performing states economically. For instance, 8 of the top 10 performing states for creating jobs, economic development, and prosperity do not have same-sex marriage, according to a study published by the National Chamber Foundation. According to Moody's Analytics, 9 of the top 10 states for job growth have voted to protect traditional marriage. 9 of the 10 best states for business have voted to preserve traditional marriage, according to a survey of 650 business leaders by Chief Executive Magazine. Our local states that are competing for jobs, like Oregon, Idaho, California, Nevada, and Montana, all have voted to protect marriage.
Mary, that's...
Thank you.
Thank you. Maureen, you have 2 minutes for an opening statement.
Thank you. Thanks. I'm really pleased to be here tonight. Actually, I'm really pleased because this is the last candidate debate that we and I confess we've had a lot of them. And frankly, I give a lot of credit to Mary Ruth. She's driven a lot of miles to get here to this area and to attend all of these, and I really appreciate that. I'm running for my 5th term as your state legislator, and I love what I do, and if I didn't love it, I promise you I wouldn't run again. But I really do feel like the legislature is an incredible environment, and one that, frankly, it's a job where you learn something new every day. And I think if you could say that about any job, that's a really great advantage and a wonderful benefit. I have actually worked for the district for 20 years. I worked as a legislative assistant to Representative Dave Maston for 12 years. And again, I've been in the House now for 8 years, and so I'm running for my 5th 2-year term. 4-year terms are tough, but 2-year terms are really tough because every time you turn around, you're running for re-election. I work very hard on behalf of families and children. I think it's one of the most important things we do in the legislature. I think a lot of the agencies of government that we have, a lot of our social service agencies, are all based on the fact that there's a lot of dysfunction in families out there. If we can help empower families to raise their own children and empower our families to feel successful, I would submit to you that the best thing that we can do for children is make sure that their parents have a job to support them. And those are the policies that I work on. Those are the policies I enjoy working on and will continue to work on. We do have some ideological differences. Mary Ruth pointed that out. Sometimes I think you have to vote your conscience, and the one thing I promised myself is I would never cast a vote if it meant I had to roll on my convictions and my beliefs in the interest of political expediency. I just can't do that. And I hope that folks trust me enough to be reasonable and thoughtful so that I do make the best decisions on their behalf.
Thank you. Now a set of questions, which I'll ask the same question to each of you. You will each have 1.5 minutes to respond, 1 minute for a rebuttal if you choose. The first question will start with Mary Ruth. The first order of business for the upcoming legislative session will be crafting a budget for the 2013-15 biennium. Balancing budget priorities can be difficult and usually require some give and take from each side of the aisle. if elected, what priorities will drive your budget decisions?
As I mentioned in my opening statement, I do believe that priorities of government is an essential part of the budget making process. In the past, it has been used only intermittently on a temporary basis. I believe if we make that a permanent part of the budget process, that will go a long way. And what priorities of government is when the governor directs the department heads to look critically at their own departmental budgets and make the decisions as to what is important to keep and what is not. And then that gets rolled into the bigger picture. And I believe that that is very critical to identify those areas that could really be cut or either reduced greatly or eliminated altogether.
Lori, you have a minute and a half to talk about what priorities would drive your budget.
Well, for the last 8 years that I've served in the House, it has been a priorities of government process out of necessity. We have had horrible budgets. The economy tanked. We have passed unsustainable budgets in the legislature. It's very hard to say no to people when they come to you. And for a long time, our state was very flush with money. But we also, just like every other state in the union, we have experienced an incredible downturn. And as a result, every year that we have been there, we have sliced and diced and slashed and burned, and it has been a very, very difficult process. Mike was right. It hasn't been very fun the last 5 years because you have to face people who have come to you and said, why in the world would you cut these wonderful programs? One man's wonderful program isn't necessarily another man's wonderful program, and there are priorities that differ on both sides of the aisle, and you can imagine. Look at our political process. That's how this thing works. But I agree with Senator Hewitt. I think the more we work in a bipartisan fashion to try to come up with what those priorities are that are the most important for our communities and for this state, that's the way we have to do it. When you get over there, relationships are key. You do not burn bridges, you build them. And I pride myself in being able to do that.
Mary Ruth, you have 1 minute as a rebuttal if you wish. Maureen, you have 1 minute as a rebuttal if you wish.
No, thank you.
Next question then. We'll start with Maureen. Small businesses have been particularly hurt by the economic downturn, and many are struggling just to keep their doors open and make payroll. When our B&O tax system, our high minimum wage rate, our unemployment tax rate, and our workers' compensation system are considered, many have described Washington's business climate as less than favorable for small businesses. Where do small businesses fit into your legislative agenda, and what, if anything, would you do to offer them some relief?
I resemble that remark. I have a small business, actually. I have a little sausage business, sausage and laws, the two things you should never see being made. That's what I do. I'm just that much of a masochist, I guess. And I have struggled with my small business, but I must say my business is sort of propelled not so much by finances as much as emotion. My business was halfway built when my husband passed away, and I was just hell-bent on getting it finished. And it's sort of been my legacy to my husband to be able to have his wonderful sweet onion sausage, to peddle at the farmers markets every Saturday morning, and to have my little storefront open 4 days a week. At which I hire 16 and 17-year-old kids to work. And I do that because I really, really worry that our kids don't know how to work anymore. They don't have a work ethic, and it's very difficult for employers to spend $9.19, which is what our minimum wage will be in January, to hire a youngster who frankly is fed, clothed, and housed at their parents' house. And so at some point when we're passing out the jobs, which are few and far between these days, we are prioritizing those folks who actually have mouths to feed at home, parents who need those jobs desperately. And frankly, with our child labor laws, it's been a tremendous deterrent as well for any employer to take on a young person. But to me, it's important to do that. It doesn't take a brain surgeon to cook a sausage, and I'm glad to do it. And I've got a couple of great young men working at my store right now. And I would hope that...
We're going to finish that with hope. Mary Ruth, where would small businesses fit into your legislative agenda? And if so, what would you do for relief?
Okay, I believe that small businesses are what keep our economy running. And in this state, as you mentioned, small businesses have a hard time of it. There are two different things that I would address. One is the minimum wage. As Marie Moss has mentioned, we have the highest minimum wage in the nation. We are 24% above the federal minimum wage. And I think if we were to look at something like creating a training wage, which might be, it's been proposed 85% of minimum wage for a certain amount of time for our younger workers or people who have no experience in that area. So like 16 to 19-year-olds or whatever we might decide, but that would be ease some of that burden with our small businesses. Another thing I would look at is our B&O tax, our business and occupation tax is very convoluted, very complicated. It has, it seems like every time you turn around, there's another business or category being exempted from it. And so I believe we should just get rid of the existing B&O tax and replace it with a business tax, perhaps a flat business tax with no exemption, so that it kind of evens the playing field for all of our business in the state, whether you're small, medium, or large, no matter what industry you're in. I believe those are two things that I would definitely address to improve our business climate even.
Or you have a minute for rebuttal if you wish.
I actually would agree with Meredith. I think something like training wage would be appropriate. As far as our B&O tax is concerned, I am taxed on my gross receipts. So I can't even back out my cost of doing business, my cost of operation, prior to having to meet that tax amount. That's an egregious tax, if you ask me. It's something I think we take a strong look at. One of my ideas, and I've been working with a couple of folks on the other side of the aisle with actually, is a B&O tax, an incremental B&O tax, where maybe the first year that a new business starts up, they pay 20% B&O tax. That other 80% they would have had to pay, they could reinvest in their business. The second year, maybe 40%, third, 60, fourth, 80, and then maybe about the fifth year they're paying the 100% of the B&O tax, once they've got the business up and running and hopefully they're successful.
Mary Ruth, you have a minute if you wish to rebuttal. Thank you. Third question, we'll start, Mary Ruth, with you. In the Cleary decision, the Washington State Supreme Court ruled that the state is not living up to its constitutional obligation to fully fund education. What do you think a fully funded educational system looks like, and how would you accomplish it?
That's a terrible question to ask a teacher. As I said, this is my second career, and coming from a business environment into the teaching realm is a pretty big eye-opener. I work every day with the frustrations of No Child Left Behind, and now we're moving to this Common Core standards. I think we need to get education back to its core function, which is education. I know they talk about smaller class sizes, and they want to try and solve all of society's ills in the classroom, and that's not really what we need. What we need is, I've had classrooms of 27 students, and that's about all we could fit in there. But they say the ideal is 18 kids. Well, wouldn't that be nice? But that's not really what happens. I think if we can identify things, look at some ways that we can. Does every classroom really need to have a paraeducator? Some teachers would say yes. I would say no. I can function quite fine without that. Let's get back to teaching our students reading, writing, arithmetic, science, and social studies. Those are the critical things that they need to be successful in life. And let's eliminate all this extraneous stuff that they call education, which really doesn't go in any direction towards having them be successful in life and successful in graduating from high school.
All right, what would a fully funded educational system look like to you, and how would you do it?
Well, in order to meet the demands of the McCleary decision, it would be about $3 billion more that frankly we don't have. But we have been trying to set some policies in motion that will be beneficial. One thing we did this year, which really struck me as kind of strange, is there was a principal and teacher evaluation bill. And folks got up and started giving these glorious floor speeches about how we can improve the educational system. And I listened to several of those speeches, and finally I just couldn't handle it. I stood up and I said, why in the world, in not one of these speeches have I heard the word parent? We really need to get parents re-engaged in their children's education, and that's a lot why I'm a supporter of early learning. I think it's really important. People say, well, why do we need to teach young children? Let kids be kids. Well, it's because their brains are synapsing at an incredible rate. They can be taught. They love to be taught. They embrace that. And frankly, a lot of the advantage of the early learning system and the initiative for early learning right now is helping parents be better parents. helping, again, empower our parents to really engage with their children's educational system and let their kids know that they have their back. I think that's really important, and that's my hope, because Mary Ruth is absolutely right. We have put a lot of unfunded mandates out to the school districts to do all kinds of wonderful things for sociability purposes, and I think that it's very important that we re-engage parents in the educational process. I think that too, yeah.
Mary Ruth, you got 1 minute to wish you about it.
All right, I would agree that yes, parents need to be held accountable, but more importantly, students need to be held accountable. I taught 4th grade for 3 years before moving into teaching reading only, and the second year that I had a classroom full of 27 students, 80% of those students were not passing in all subject areas, but yet I had to pass them on. I had no way of holding those children back. And honestly, that would have been the best thing for them, because I sent them on at a deficit. So they're starting the year at a deficit. And so by the time they get up to, 10th grade, they're so far behind that they just, they give up and they throw up their hands and they drop out. And that's not what we want. We want to see our kids be successful all the way through high school after that, and they need skills that are going to take them even farther, and they can choose either vocational school, high school, whatever they need, or higher ed, that type of thing. But it's important that we hold students and their parents accountable.
Maureen, you have a minute if you would like to rebuttal.
No, thank you.
Let's start the 4th question, and this will be the final question of this set with Maureen. What is your view of the role of a representative in terms of representing the wishes of the people in your legislative district? If there is a difference between your personal views and the views of your constituents, how will you rectify these differences, and what principles will guide your decision-making process?
I feel like I always take a very principled approach to any legislation that comes before me in Olympia. But that being said, again, I have to live with myself. And sometimes issues come up that can frankly call out for you to use your conscience and your best judgment. And this year I made the toughest vote of my career. And I knew that was going to be a tough vote. And frankly, truth be told, I cried myself to sleep many, many days during the session, because I knew that I had really put myself out there to vote in favor of something that I felt very strongly about, something that I believe is a core tenet of frankly our country, and that's freedom, and that's our liberties, and that's our rights. And as much as I respect and appreciate the far right wing of the party and the religious right wing of the Republican Party, I am a legislator, I'm a government representative, and not all of my 137,000 constituents are of the Judeo-Christian faith. I was raised a Catholic. My folks have been married 60 years in the Catholic Church. There's never been a divorce in my family. I have a tremendous respect for the institution of marriage. I loved my 23-year marriage. I would find it abhorrent to try to deny that right to two committed couples. And that's just how I felt. That's how I voted. And again, I've said to many of my constituents, if it is the one issue that defines me as your legislator, I totally understand why you won't support me, and I respect that.
Thank you. Mary, you have a minute and a half to explain personal perspectives and constituent wishes.
Okay. When I decided to run as a Republican for this seat, I did so with full knowledge and understanding and commitment to the platform that I decided to run on. I believe in traditional marriage. I believe in life. I believe in personal property rights. Everything that is in the Republican platform, I am behind. Also, I believe that if you are elected as a representative, you are a representative of the people. And so you need to listen to the people that you are representing, because, what's the point? You need to listen to what people are telling you. Now, if they're asking you to do something that is illegal, immoral, like fracking, that's a joke. I think you need to be guided by the state constitution, you need to be guided by the federal constitution. I believe that you need to be guided by your platform. And most importantly, you need to be communicating with your constituents, listening to what they are asking you, finding answers for them if you need be, if you need to, we're a representative republic. And every state that has joined this republic has had to agree to be under that same, sorry, it's called a long day. But I believe that, yes, if I'm representing you, that is who I need to listen to, and my own feelings cannot get into it.
Marie, you have 1 minute for rebuttal if you wish.
Thank you. I don't believe any of my constituents would ever say that I didn't listen to them. I have probably one of the most accessible offices. I'm out of the farmers markets every Saturday morning, kind of having mini town hall meetings. I am a responsive legislator, and I'm pretty well known for that, and I appreciate that. It was Edmund Burke who said, a representative owes you not only their industry, but their judgment. And they betray you instead of serve you if they sacrifice it to your opinion. And in this particular case, I really felt strongly, and my conscience guided me in making a decision that I feel is the right decision, and I also think history will prove that out.
Mary Ruth, you have 1 minute if you would like for a rebuttal. At this point, there are questions that we ask each candidate to submit to be addressed to the other candidate. They were given a maximum of 2 apiece. One of the candidates submitted 1 question, so that's where we'll start. The first question is for Maureen Walsh for Mary Ruth Edwards. You'll have 1.5 minutes and there will be no rebuttal. Why have you wasted so much of the taxpayers' time and money to dwell on something that has been defeated twice by the voters?
Something that has been defeated twice by the voters. I'm sorry, I need some clarification on the question. I'm not sure what you're talking about.
I don't have clarification, I just have a question. So if you would perhaps talk about the first half of the question. Have you wasted time and taxpayer money on an issue that the voters seem...
Are you referring to the same-sex marriage bill? Is that what you're talking about? Oh,
There.
okay. That referendum 71 referred to the domestic partnership bill, which I also had co-signed. Frankly, I'm surprised folks are really surprised that I supported marriage equality after I frankly co-sponsored the domestic partnership bill in this state as well, feeling again that it was the right thing to do. It was also called the Everything But Marriage bill, and frankly, it isn't everything but marriage. And semantics are strong. Don't fool yourself. It passed 53 to 54% in the state, though. I will point that out, so I'm not really sure if you're referring to the district vote, and if that is in fact the case, you're absolutely right. It is the biggest balancing act I've ever had to make in making my decision in the legislature. But again, I hope that folks think that I'm reasonable-minded, that I really looked at that issue strongly, which I did, and so I guess that's my answer.
This question is from Mary Ruth from Maureen. In prior candidate forums, Mary Ruth, you have shared that you raised your children as a single mom. You also state that your opposition to marriage equality has to do with the need for a child to have the influence of a male and female parent in their life. Your kids turned out great, which exemplifies that kids really just need to have a parent who loves and supports them. Gay couples can and are doing that successfully. Don't you think your own experience contradicts your argument?
No, I don't. And the reason is that I believe in the traditional marriage to me is the traditional definition is the conjugal definition, which means one man, one woman coming together to produce children and providing a stable environment in which to raise them, providing gender role models as well as relationship models. Now that is the ideal. And in my case, yes, I was a single mom. My husband came back from the First Persian Gulf War. I can never say that. The Persian Gulf War. And when I was 2 months pregnant with our second child, he said, I don't want the responsibility of wife and child, and he left. Now, for several years, my children only went to see him once a month. But then he kind of smartened up and decided he did want to spend time with his children. So my children did have a role. Their father was there, maybe not all the time, but they did have that. The ideal is what we are shooting for. And I've read numerous of studies that point out that children raised in a same-sex environment have they encounter many problems growing up. And in fact, I've seen some reports that say as high as 45% of teenage men will attempt suicide when these are children that have been raised in a same-sex environment. Now, that is probably, obviously, not the case in every situation, but we are shooting for the ideal.
Thank you. The final question in this set is for Maureen from Mary Ruth. Voting for gay marriage, being pro-choice, and voting with the Democrats 30% of the time, would you feel comfortable returning to the Democrat Party?
Returning to the Democrat, I've never been in the Democrat Party. Again, I don't think I make any secret about the fact that, yeah, I'm a moderate Republican. And you know what else? I'm a Republican who's been in an environment that's been controlled in the House, the Senate, and the governor's mansion by the Democratic Party. And guess what? I want to get some things done. I really don't want to go in there and dig my heels in and say, hell no, I'm not going to cooperate because I'm a Republican and you're a Democrat and I'm not going to work with you. I build bridges, I don't burn them, and I will continue to do that because that has been the way I have been the most effective for this district and this state in the legislature. I am proud of my accomplishments. I am proud that I have reached across the aisle and worked with good Democrats. You know, there's been a wonderful collaborative effort between the parties. We had a bipartisan budget passed this year. Senator Hewitt's right. It took a little bit of a kind of a dramatic move on the part of the Senate to get us there. But at that point, we forced collaboration, we forced cooperation, we forced communication between the parties to get a budget out that could be supported in a bipartisan manner. And you know what? I'm very proud of that. And the day that you want me to go over there and just be the mouthpiece of the Republican Party and dig in my heels and promise not to be very bipartisan, I don't want to do it. I like to work with people and I like to get things done.
Thank you. It's now time for closing comments. Mary Ruth, you have 2 minutes for closing comment.
As I said before, I am a conservative Republican, and I know that at times I'm called that I'm a far-right Republican. I'm called, other words, not by Ms. Walsh. I didn't want to give that impression. I want to make that clear. But yeah, I have strong beliefs. I was in the Marine Corps. I learned how to fight. I learned how to fight not only physically with an M16, with a hand grenade, but also with strength of will. And, when I believe in something, then I will dig in my heels and I will fight for that. And traditional marriage is one of those things. And I do believe that, although it is a social issue, that it is very important to our economy, to our society as a whole. I've been hearing it termed marriage equality, and there is, I don't consider it an issue of marriage equality. If we're talking about marriage equality, then that means we need to let 14-year-olds get married. We need to let people decide if they want to marry their dog or their house. That's marriage equality. That means opening it up to everybody. I personally believe it should be between a man and a woman. I'm not discounting the fact that couples who love one another, I'm not saying that they don't love each other. That's not anything. But I don't think that you can equate love between a man and a man, or a woman and a woman, or a man's dog, the same as love between a man and a woman. I think it's different. I think that I am a good listener. I learned to be that as a teacher. When I was in business, I worked in human resources. I had to be able to talk to people, listen to people, to take direction from people. I believe that I'm good at that, and I think I would do a good job of that in Olympia. And I believe that if I'm entrusted with your vote, that I would do the best job possible in Olympia, and thank you.
Thank you. Maureen, you have 2 minutes for a closing comment.
Okay, thank you again. I really do appreciate being able to do this. And I appreciate very much my opponent. I think anybody who is dumb enough to run for public service these days, as thankless as this job can be, deserves a lot of credit, and I do applaud her for that. I've worked very hard for this district. I've worked very hard for the state. And again, I have a passion for what I do. And I hope that I have a good proven track record, that I do represent all 137,000 of my constituents in this district. I think that's really important. Sometimes you're faced with really tough decisions. Boy, this year that was exemplified tremendously to me. But I have to live with myself, and I have to be able to hold my head high and say, I did the right thing. And I really do believe that. And I, again, am so proud to serve this district. We are so on the map now, as Senator Hewitt alluded to, and I tell folks we're the most wine-saturated district in the state. We're very proud of that. The rich diversification of our agricultural industry, You know, frankly, I think we have so much to offer in this area, and though we don't have tourist dollars, we probably will try and get some of those back, but frankly, I think people flock to this state because it is so beautiful, and I hope that will continue, and our quality of life is very important, and I think everybody deserves that quality of life. And again, thanks for having me tonight. I appreciate being here.
A few minutes ago, Senator, you had worried that people would leave as the night progressed. We have one more relatively short presentation for the U.S. Representative Congressional District number 5. I hope you all stay, and we're going to take a little bitty break, just long enough to change the tables, refill the water bottles, maybe you can grab a cookie in the lobby, but no more than that because I will start in a hurry.